Hello everyone. We're going to look at solving equations. And for these are a simple one-step equation that involve addition and subtraction. So the whole premise of solving equations is to get the variable by itself. And that also means no negative sign on the variable. I want to get that letter on one side of the equal sign like this, and then have some number on the other side. And you know that these are interchangeable. Okay. So, but what it is I want to get that variable by itself and all the numbers on the other side of the equation. And how I do that by performing the inverse operation. Inverse operations. Uh, Inverse is like, we can think of it as the opposite. So the inverse of subtraction is addition. The inverse of addition is subtraction. Inverse of multiplication is division. And the inverse of division is multiplication. So that's what I'm looking at. So let's take what we just talked about and be able to put it into practice with one of our problems. We'll look at problem number 1. So what I want to do is that I want to get x by itself. I need to get that 4 away from x. So what I do is I look at the 4. This is a negative 4. So what is the opposite of a negative 4? A positive 3. So whenever I add and subtract, the number that I'm trying to create is a 0. So whenever I add or subtract, I'm trying to make a 0. Okay. So if I look at that and I say, okay, so there is a negative 4. The opposite is a plus 4. The inverse operation is to add 4. Just like fractions, what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So if I add 4 to this side, I must add 4 to this side. What did I create? I created a 0. Now you don't have to write that 0 in there, but for my examples I'm just going to show you, and I can just say x plus 0 because it doesn't matter. Bring my equal sign down. 2 plus 4 is 6. So what I'm left with, because that 0 just goes away and it's not there, is x equals 6. And then I can check that. I can evaluate, just like I evaluated expressions. I can, in lieu of x, I write 6. 6 minus 4, does that equal 2? Yes, it does. 2 equals 2. Okay, so let's look at number 2. I have 3 plus h equals 5. Again, what I want to do is I want to get my variable by itself. So what's with it right now? A 3. Is that 3 positive or negative? Positive. So what is the inverse operation? Subtraction. So what I'm going to do, the opposite number of a 3 is a negative 3. I'm going to subtract by 3. If I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other. 3 minus 3 is 0. And then I just bring my h down. 5 minus 3 is 2. H equals 2. Again, I can look at that, and you should probably be able to visualize it. Some of these problems you already know what the variable equals, but it's important to work out simple problems before you get to more complex. That is true. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll ask you to pause the video. I want you to see if you can work 3 and 4. A little bit more complicated, both of them. And let's see if we end up with the same answers. Alright, So what I want to do is I want to get the variable by itself. But what I should notice, guess what's with that variable? A negative sign. I don't care what a negative x is. I want to know what x is. That's okay. We'll be able to take care of that. I'll show you. And so I look and I say, okay, what number is with my x? A 5. Is that 5 positive or negative? It's positive, so I need to do the opposite. I need to do a minus 5. If I do it to one side, I have to do it to another. I'm not going to write the 0 this time. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop this negative x down. Negative x equals, and then I have 2 minus 5. That's a negative 3. Alright, very important aspect to learn, because you'll use this the rest of the semester and you'll use it through the remainder of your math classes. If I want to change the sign on something, all I have to do is multiply by a negative 1. If I say a negative 1, and if I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other, it'll flip my sign, because a negative times a negative gives me a positive. And I haven't changed anything, because what I did to one side I'm doing to the other. So negative times a negative is a positive, so it means x, and a negative times a negative, that means 3. And let's check. Plug this back in. I say 5 minus 3 equals 2. 2 equals 2. Yes. And now for our other one, what we have to do here is we need to combine like terms. We need to combine like terms before we can solve. This becomes a negative 5. It's a negative 10. And that's plus x. I need to get my variable by itself, and what is with it is a negative 10. So what do? I add 10. If I do it to one side, I have to do it to another. So I end up with 5 equals x. If we check that, I end up with the negative 5 equals, oops, put parentheses around there, equals a negative 10 plus 10 minus 5. Well, what does that become? 0. Negative 5 equals a negative 5. And that is addition and subtraction for solving equations. Remember, we always want to get the variable by itself. No negative number with that variable. Whenever I do my addition or subtraction, I'm wanting to create the number 0. What I do to one side of my equation, I must do to the other side. And how, in essence, what I'm doing, I guess I should point this out, is that I took this 4, and actually what I did was I moved it over here. I made it go away over here and I put it over here. So, and I do that by performing the inverse operations. I look and say, is that a positive 4 or a negative 4? And then I do the opposite of it. Alright guys, continue to watch your publisher's videos. Critically think and structure your homework. Write everything out. Check your work. And good luck on your homework problems.